It is Burnout at Breakfast. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am going to see if I can change an internet setting because that's. Are we live? I think we are. I think we're ready to go. Why does this always happen on lives? Good morning. It is Burnout at Breakfast. Can you believe it is Monday, the 29th of June? 29th of June, right? We're July on Wednesday. I am Kelly Swingler. If you do not know me, I am the burnoutologist. My first burnout made me really seriously ill. My second nearly killed me. And I have spent 12 years joining the dots to really, really understand what burnout is and what burnout isn't. I am founder of the Burnout Academy. I've trained almost 200 coaches over the last 2 years in how to be burnout informed. And I am on a mission to ensure that all coaching is burnout informed, and that we have specifically trained master burnout coaches who can work with this rise of burnout, this epidemic of burnout, this endemic of burnout that we have got going on all around the world right now. I said this morning that I was going to do this Burnout at Breakfast as a live Q&A. So if you are there live, good morning. Also, if you are watching on replay and you have questions, pop them in the comments and I will maybe do another one of these Q&A sessions. I might even do one next week. I've got 7 questions this morning that one of them, the first question that I'm going to answer, came up repeatedly, and it's one that I have answered repeatedly over I don't know how many years. So we're going to start with that one. Depending on how much of a rant I go into with that particular question, we might not get very far through the other 6, but we'll see where we go on those. But my plan is this morning I'm going to work through those. But again, if you're joining live, if you're watching live, if you've got questions, pop those in the chat for me. I'm going to make sure all of the comments are open for you so that I can see all of those. So good morning. I am joining you live from 4 LinkedIn and YouTube. So good morning to all of you YouTubers. Good morning to you LinkedIners. And should we get started? As I said, we've got 7 questions. I'm not sure how many of these we'll get through, but this first one, as I said, is one that I have been asked a lot. I have answered a lot in videos, in blogs, in lives. This really was the question that I was being asked over and over and over again. And this is what prompted me to create the Burnout Academy in the first place. And this first question is, how do I tell my client they're at burnout? How do I tell my client they're at burnout? Now, you might not be a coach. You might be thinking, you might be a boss, you might be a leader, you might be an individual, you might have a family member that is at burnout. You might, so you might want to replace client with whatever word, right? How do I tell my husband? How do I tell my wife? How do I tell my cousin, my niece, my nephew, my team member, my colleague, my client, right? You might want to fill in the gap with this particular question. Your role is not to tell anyone that they are at burnout, right? The answer to that question, how do I tell my client they're at burnout, is quite simply, you don't. Right? Simple as that. You don't. Now, of course, I could leave that one there, or I could go into a little bit of a rant. If you know me, you'll know that we'll probably go into a little bit of a rant, but hopefully this additional information may help to show you why we do not diagnose. Now, I have trained doctors and therapists and mental health professionals and medical professionals in understanding what burnout is and what it isn't, and some of the early signs. I am not even, again, I've done all that training. I am qualified in lots and lots of different things and certified in lots and lots of different things. I am not qualified or certified in being able to diagnose anybody. Even after all the work, even after everything that I've done, all of the training, all of the qualifications, I am not qualified. I'm not a medical professional. And I have trained in therapies, but I do not practice as a therapist. I am not qualified to diagnose anybody or say to anybody, I think you're at burnout. And that's with 12 years and nearly £300,000 spent on my own training and learning and qualifications and all of my research and all of my studies and everything that I do. I am still not qualified to diagnose anybody with burnout. That for me is like overstepping a moral and ethical boundary. And if you're thinking, well, I've got to tell my client they're at burnout, I've got to firstly, do you fully understand what burnout is and what burnout isn't? Because a lot of you assume that you know what burnout is, but actually you don't. So we're in dangerous territory. But even if I were able to diagnose, a lot of the signs can mirror and or replicate signs and symptoms of mental health conditions, physical health conditions, emotional health conditions. I may have spent 12 years and a ton of money and a ton of research and, you know, all of the studies and all of the work. I may have spent, you know, more than a decade working in this space. Can I class myself as an expert in burnout? Yeah, probably, you know, yeah, after this amount of time. And yet I am not an expert and I'm not qualified in anything else that burnout could be similar to. And if I were to say to somebody, you're at burnout, this is what we need to do about it. And actually it wasn't burnout. It was an autoimmune condition. It was a mental health condition. It was an emotional health condition. It was some other kind of health condition. Maybe it were menopause, perimenopause, postmenopausal symptoms. If I've missed all of those things and I'm purely coaching somebody on how to get through burnout, but their symptoms become worse, the signs become worse, their health becomes worse, that's got to sit with me. So in terms of coaches, yes, we can, you know, what you are displaying, what you are showing, there are signs and symptoms that could be burnout. Okay, let's coach through that. But your role is not to say to anybody, hey, Kelly, I think you're at burnout. That can do more harm than good. And this is where I think we absolutely still misunderstand and miscommunicate the severity of burnout. And a lot of that is because we've got the World Health Organization definition telling us it's just unmanaged chronic workplace stress. We just become a bit cynical at work, right? It's basically what that says. That's, as far as I'm concerned, and all of the work and research and training that I've done in creating burnoutology, that psychology definition, the World Health Organization definition, focuses on about this much of what the definition of burnout actually is, because it doesn't talk about the mental impact. It doesn't talk about how it impacts our cognitive thinking. It doesn't impact how it impacts our emotions. It doesn't talk about how it impacts our nervous system or our body or our career or our relationships or our friendships or our work. It doesn't impact it doesn't describe any of that stuff. So if you're looking at the World Health Organization definition and going, yeah, you're at burnout, and you're missing all of the rest of the picture, you could be doing more harm than good for every single client that you come across. I said I could get a bit ranty with this one, but I'm really passionate about this one. Because I think this is what's happening. We've got people that are, I think you're at burnout, right? You're at burnout. This is what you need. You're at burnout. This is what you need. You're at burnout. Just improve your sleep. You're at burnout. This is what you need to do. You just need to stop, right? You can say you are displaying some of the signs of what could be burnout, but then as coaches, we have to be referring on, right? If you think it's burnout, if you're not a burnout informed coach, firstly, if you're not a burnout informed coach and you want to be, you need to be on my next training. But if you're not a burnout informed coach, you have no right to be talking about burnout. Definitely not trying to coach it, because you could be doing more harm than good. So you refer to a burnout informed coach, or you refer to a specific burnout coach, a master burnout coach, or you refer to a therapist, a mental health practitioner, a GP, a doctor. But your role as a coach is not to say, I think you're at burnout, and then here's, improve your sleep, set some more boundaries and you'll be okay again. That is doing more harm than good. And somebody that is at burnout is not going to be able to implement those things. So the answer to the question, how do I tell my client you're at burnout? You do not. If they need a diagnosis, you refer them to somebody that can diagnose. If you want to continue to coach at the same time, continue to coach at the same time, but you need to be referring them on to somebody else. But you wouldn't be diagnosing, right? Unless you're trained, you wouldn't be diagnosing autoimmune conditions. You wouldn't be diagnosing, I hope not, mental health conditions. I hope you would not be diagnosing anything that you are not qualified to talk about. And if you're not qualified to talk about burnout, stop talking about it. Because you might think you know what it is, because you might have read a blog, you might have read a book, you might have looked at the World Health Organization definition, you might have looked at the 12 signs, you might think, well, I know everything there is to know about burnout. I will guarantee you that you do not. So answer to the first question, how do I tell my client they're at burnout? You do not. Full stop. And then we could maybe put in some in some little quotation marks, right? Unless you are qualified to do so. But you don't. That's question one. What's Corinda saying? I'd love to interview your company on a hi Corinda. Yeah, drop me do you want to send me a DM and we can have a look at that for you. Thank you very much. Yeah, have DM me and we can pick that up. Thank you very much. Okay, right. Second question then. We do have time. Let's see how many of these we can get to. Okay, second question. What is the biggest mistake that coaches make when they're working with someone at burnout? Again, this could be a whole other episode, right? This could be a whole other episode. What's the biggest mistake coaches make when they're working with someone at burnout? I think the biggest, right, the number one is that lots of coaches go straight into coaching solutions, coaching goals, wanting to move people forward before they understand the state and safety of that client. The thing that I'm massive on, right, huge on, is ensuring that burnout informed and master burnout coaches start that coaching relationship looking at state and safety. Now, coach training, I've trained in, I don't know how many different types of coaching over the years. We typically, right, coaching is about performance. It is about moving people forward. I think all of the types of coaching that I have trained and qualified in, even the types of therapy that I've trained and qualified in, have all been solution focused, right? Solution focused executive coaching, solution focused empowerment coaching, solution focused psychotherapy, solution focused hypnotherapy, right? Everything and more. All of those things have been about, let's focus on the solution. Let's get people moving forward. Let's focus on the goals and the performance and the momentum. And right, fundamentally, that's coaching, right? Moving people forward to achieve a goal. And yet the statistics tell us, the workplace is telling us, the performance is telling us, everything is telling us that burnout is rising at a really, really fast rate. Now, coaches that are not equipped to be coaching burnout, or coaches that do not understand or recognize the signs of burnout, continue to just go straight into goals. Now, for some people, that's going to be absolutely fine. But if burnout is in the room, whether you know what you're looking for or not, if burnout is in the room, continuing to just coach on goals and performance is very likely going to push that person further and quicker and harder into collapse related to burnout. And I would love, this is why I say I want all coaching to be burnout informed from now on, because I genuinely think if we could, as coaches, really, really create that feeling of calm and safety at the start of every single coaching relationship, all of our clients would then make more progress, whether burnout's in the room or not. Because whether it is work related, whether it's performance related, whether we've got high performers, whatever it is, all of us at the moment, I say all of us, that's a very broad sweeping statement as I very much understand. But I think the world in which we live in at the moment, with the tech and the phones and the constant notifications and the constant work, and we've still got lots of kind of hustle culture, work hard, we've still got goals and aspirations. The whole world's out there telling us that we need to be earning 10K a month or 20K a month, or jacking our works, we'd be better off earning 7-figure businesses and all of this stuff, right? Social media is stealing our attention spans are reducing. All of us could do with more of a reset. All of us could do with more of a recharge. All of us could do with more being present, being in the moment. And a lot of coaching ignores that. A lot of coaching will ignore safety, will ignore state. A lot of coaching ignores emotions and how we're feeling. It's just like, let's focus on the performance. Let's go, 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 go. Now, I've had clients over the years, many clients over the years, that have asked if it's okay for them to talk to me about something that is like going on at home, or something that's going on with their kids, or something that's going on with a sports team or community event or something. Now, I've always said I'm, I suppose, a holistic coach, right? Which for some people might think, oh, it's a little bit woolly. By holistic, I mean whole person. Whole person, not just that one goal. And not enough of us, I do not believe, are trained as coaches to understand that whole person. I'm not talking about like life coaching. I'm still positioned, like I would still position myself all day, every single day as an executive coach. But the whole person. Trying to help an exec, trying to help a CEO, trying to help the chair of the board, trying to help anybody at that C-suite level, or leaders or whoever, manage a merger or an acquisition, or like I need to be in a better state. Like, can you help me reduce my stress levels so that I can deal with a huge project that I've got coming up, or a redundancy situation coming up, or like I just want to improve my performance more. I want to build a better relationship with my exec team. I want to build a better relationship with the board. I want to develop my career. And I also feel like I'm on the brink of burnout at the moment, whatever that looks like. If I'm only focusing on like, I need to rebuild those relationships, that's all we focus on. And I'm ignoring the rest of the organization. I'm ignoring the rest of the stuff that might be raising their blood pressure, making them feel inadequate, causing them issues, right? A lot of the execs that I work with, I've coached over 700 leaders through burnout. Out of those people, the majority of them, they're not like coming to, like a lot of them are not necessarily coming to me for workplace stuff. Yes, that's part of it. And I'm not saying that burnout isn't work related. A lot of us are experiencing burnout. That is obviously work related. But a lot of the leaders that I work with, what they want is to be able to have a family meal of an evening. They want more quality time with their spouse or partner. They genuinely want to be able to spend more time with their kids. It's like I can do all of the work stuff, and I'm neglecting all of my relationships. I don't recognize who I am anymore. I can't remember the last time that I went to the pub with my friends. I can't remember that the last time that I went to a yoga class, or that I got on my bike, or I went to the gym, or I was able to go to one of my kids' sporting events and actually be present enough for it. I can't remember the last time that I sat and read my kids a bedtime story without checking my emails under a pillow, right? They're all real life scenarios that people have come to me with. As high performers, as type A, and it's not just type A and high performers that will get to the point of burnout. None of us are immune to burnout, but for the majority of us, we can continue to do the work. Most of us standing on our heads, right? Give more pressure. Yeah, I'll take it. More work. Yeah, I'll take it. More toxicity. Yeah, I'll take it. Right. Just keep on going, going, going. But it's what's happening to us outside of work that is typically starting to take its toll. And if we ignore that, and again, I've spoken to coaches who are like, in my supervision session, my supervisor said, we don't talk about emotions. My supervisor said, we shouldn't be worried about what's going on for people outside of work, right? For me, that's not adequate supervision. And if that is the quality of supervision, and I know it's not, I've got coaching supervisors that train with me in the Burnout Academy that still show up in the Burnout Coach Collective every single month. I know that is not the full standard of supervision, but if that is a large majority of supervision as a result of a large majority of coach training, this is why we need to focus on it being burnout informed. The world of work has changed dramatically. The world has changed dramatically, and coaching hasn't caught up. So if we're only focusing on performance and we're only continue to focus on goals, that, as far as I'm concerned, is the number one mistake that most coaches are making. They're just focusing on the goals before the safety. They are also kind of maybe understanding that maybe some of that resistance is maybe like just a bit of, I don't know, excuses, right? If you're resistant to change, maybe it's just an excuse, like, let's just focus on your mindset. Again, burnout impacts the brain in such a way we can't always come up with the solutions. And I know it used to be, right, what used to be one of my favorite coaching questions, right? But what would it be if you did know? And then I realized for burnout, it's like you can't access that part of the brain. It doesn't mean I'm lazy. It doesn't mean I am ignoring the question. It doesn't mean I don't want to grow. It doesn't mean I'm not focused. It genuinely means I cannot access that part of my brain. So if you're coaching into, right, just tell me more. What would it be if you did know? All of that sort of stuff. The brain doesn't get to that. It can't access that bit. And again, I still wholeheartedly believe as a coach that every single one of us holds the answers that we need, right? I believe every single one of us has got the answers in here somewhere. Burnout stops us being able to access that. And again, as a coach, if you do not understand that, I come back to, you know, a video that I did a few weeks ago, right? I had seen on my LinkedIn feed a coach very, very proudly talking about the fact that they'd sacked one of their clients because their client was lazy. They just like weren't performing. And this coach was like, I'm not here for that, right? I'm a high performance coach. This is what I do. This is what I do. This is what I do. And I'm looking at the posts and like everything was glaringly over, like to me, like, well, that could be burnout, right? If you'd have asked this question, if you'd have changed your coaching to do this, if you'd have been a bit more aware of this, you could have potentially, again, we're not here to diagnose, but we can modify our coaching. That coach could have modified their coaching, not trained it. All of you will have your own coaching style, your own personal coaching ability, your own coaching methods and techniques and tools and all of that stuff. Like Burnout Informed doesn't take any of that away, but it adds to the amazing skills that you have. Being a master coach, a master burnout coach, again, isn't about, I'm not creating like a clone army of Kellys. I'm giving the tools and the framework and then helping you to create your own expertise and your own master coaching tools and techniques to be able to coach in a way that works for you and in the best way that works for your clients. So number one mistake that coaches make when it comes to burnout is they're not focusing on safety first. We absolutely need to be focusing on safety first. How are we doing for time? Should we try one more? Okay, how do I know whether my client is actually at burnout rather than just stressed or overwhelmed? Again, it's not for you to decide. But if we're true burnout informed coaches, again, you modify your coaching, because whether it is overwhelm or whether it is stress or whether it is burnout, a burnout informed coach can modify their coaching in a way that works for all three. Now, of course, again, when we're looking for some of the signs, if you genuinely believe that your client is experiencing severe stress, or you genuinely believe that your client is at burnout, again, unless you are trained and qualified to work with burnout, you refer onto a burnout coach or a burnout specialist. You refer to a medical professional. You refer to a therapist that can deal with that. And again, not every single therapist can deal with burnout. Not every single doctor fully understands it, but we take people to where there is the professional expertise in order to be able to help them. But understanding whether it's overwhelm, stress, or burnout, again, burnout informed coaches will modify their coaching in a way that will identify some of those things so that we can adapt the coaching in the right way to still allow people to move forwards. Right, burnout informed coaching is slower on purpose. Master burnout coaching is slower on purpose. Doesn't mean it's not effective. Doesn't mean it's not brilliant. Doesn't mean that clients can't have amazing breakthroughs. It doesn't mean that they can't have like amazing performance. Doesn't mean that they can't achieve their goals. Doesn't mean they can't smash their goals if that's what they want, right? Doesn't mean that they can't still be successful in terms of coaching. But burnout informed coaching starts in a very, very different way. And again, in some ways, it is not your role to be able to differentiate between burnout or stress or overwhelm. Now, yes, there are different signs that you can be looking for. There are different words, there's different thinking. But typically, again, there's going to be some crossover between stress and overwhelm and burnout. There's absolutely going to be crossover. But out of all three of those, the burnout is going to be the most severe. Maybe would that help if we do that as next week's live, maybe? Because there's lots and lots that I could go into more with that question. Maybe I should have gone through these in more detail beforehand, but maybe that's what we do for next week's burnout at breakfast, right? How to know whether my client is actually at burnout or just stressed or overwhelmed. Maybe let's go through that in more detail next week, because I could probably do that as a whole new live. Okay. This one probably goes into the first round that I've already done, right? Although no, it's the other side. Okay. So this question then, what should I not say to someone experiencing burnout, right? What should I not say to someone experiencing burnout? This could be a whole new live in itself, isn't it? Well, if you definitely know that it's burnout, without diagnosing, making sure that you're being safe and moral and ethical as a coach and everything that we've already talked about in this live today. But do not just say you just need to take some time off. That's not going to help them. If you are going to say to that, you just need some better boundaries, no, we're not doing that either. If you're somebody that is everything happens for a reason, right? Let's take the positives out of this. No, absolutely not. Or if you are just going to kind of say you just need to be a bit kinder to yourself, right? Just be a little bit more kinder to yourself. We're not doing that either. If we do think that somebody is at burnout, we genuinely need to be having the conversation with them, right? we're not going to say to them, just take some time off. We're not going to say you just need more boundaries. We're not going to tell them it happens for a reason. This is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to them. We're not going to tell them they just need to be kinder to themselves. We're not going to tell them to just think more positively. We are not going to tell them to just change their minds and everything will be okay. We're not going to tell them to just color code their diary. We're not going to tell them to prioritize more, right? Because again, none of those things are going to work. What we do need to say, let's flip that a little bit, and then let's draw this week's live to a close. I'll keep you for only 30 minutes on a Monday morning, but again, there's probably lots of these that we could go into more detail with. But again, what we want to be able to do, if we think we are seeing the signs, we want to refer on. But burnout informed coaching starts with safety. That's where we want to be going. Okay, we want to be starting with safety. So as I said, a couple of those. I think what we'll do then, again, if you've got more questions, put them in the comments, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching a replay. If you've got questions that you want answering, because this might form some of the next few weeks of lives that we do with you. I'm going to, as I just said, which was the question that we got to, that I said I'd do for you next week. This is what we'll do next week then. Next week, we will answer, how do I know whether my client is actually at burnout rather than just stressed or overwhelmed? I'll take that question, do that in much more detail for you next week. I said to you, we've got, what did I say, 7 questions I think I had for you this morning. We have answered, what have we done? 1, 2, 3, 4-ish. But I spent a lot of time on the first one. So we've gone 4 questions. Next week, we'll go into detail on the next. So probably the next week then, let's do then an amalgamation of the rest of those 7. I'll get those answered for you the week after next. We'll make sure that we get all of those answers, all of those live. And maybe this is the format that we take from now. So again, if you have got questions that you want answering, if you've got burnout questions that you want answering, pop them in the comments, DM me like you did for these ones that you've got. However it is that you want to get in contact, let's do that. Let's use these live sessions to answer your questions. And let's see where we go from there. And if we run out of questions, I'll go back to the whole list of things that I've got that I want to share with you on Monday mornings anyway. This is Monday, the 29th of June. This is this week's Burnout at Breakfast. I am Kelly Swingler. I'm going to say go and have an amazing, amazing week. What I'm going to pop in the comments for you below as well is 12 questions, less than 3 minutes. Find out. Most coaches literally are missing the signs of burnout. If you want to know if you are equipped to deal with it or not, I will pop the link to a short assessment below. You can just click on that, find out if you are equipped to coach burnout. Okay, I'll pop that there for you. Next week, as I said, we'll do, let me grab it again so I can say it to you and then make sure I've got a note of it to do. Next week, I'm going to answer for you in more detail. How do I know whether my client is actually at burnout rather than just stressed or overwhelmed? That's what we'll cover in next week's live. I've got my usual YouTube video coming out to you this Thursday. So take a look at that when that launches on Thursday. I'll be back with you again next Monday. Go and have an amazing week, everybody. Whatever the weather, whatever the pace, whatever it is that you're doing, go and have an amazing week. And I will see you all again next Monday. Take care for now, everybody. See you soon. Bye-bye.